and welcome to Onesies, a podcast of one season wonders and blunders. My name's Andrew.
And my name's Emily.
And we are discussing 1990s syndicated
Gem.
This time, Dracula the series. We're on episode
Seven.
What a pleasant surprise. Not that we're on episode 7, but also that it's called What a Pleasant Surprise, though we are now a third done.
Yes, this is officially 1/3 done. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Do you have 3 things? I'll go after you because, yeah.
Okay. I actually don't have as many as usual. Okay, so what we will go with is ask for Max. He's a really cool guy. Morton and Hayes will be my second point. And my third point will be, you know what Milan is like.
Okay, I am going to go with overacting. There are a few instances of that are fucking phenomenal. I'm going to go with European sports. And I'm going to go with helping vampires yet again.
It is sort of the show's regular conclusion at this point. Okay, so the opening is Gustav and Max at a cinema cafe watching a silent vampire movie that Gustav loves and Max thinks is corny. Can you imagine taking Max to see a silent movie?
No, but I can imagine. I want to watch that movie. I want to see the whole movie.
Especially since apparently 4 years later, they ripped it off and made Dracula, even though they'd already made this silent movie that's exactly the same, including the makeup.
But I honestly, like, just the little tiny bit that we saw, it was corny in all the right ways. It looks like a movie a silent movie in the 90s making fun of vampire movies, Dracula. It was so good. It was so good.
It also raises this weird thing that Gustav is a vampire movie fan.
Yeah.
And I can't remember, his grandfather, the vampire hunter, would have only died 15 years before, I think, if I'm remembering the gravestone right, before the movie came out, because he lived till like 1912 or something.
I don't remember. Yeah.
So little Gustav would have seen this in the theater knowing that his family were real life vampire hunters. It's this weird thing. It's like kind of weird. It doesn't matter, but it's just this weird.
It's like a weird disconnect from the show Bible, from the story that we know of this show.
Of these fearless vampire hunters who are actually just, vampire stands. It's weird, like they're Twilight fanboys or something. Okay, so for some reason I have manhandling Max on here. I think that was
so there were a couple things to go into my overacting. Obviously, the silent movie that we see 7 seconds of is a lot of overacting, and it's great. And then Gustav is having this conversation with Max, like, no, this is a great movie. And this guy whose name I've already forgotten, the actor I know, but the silent film actor,
Jonas Carey
or something. Yeah. He's demonstrating the acting chops of the actor by manhandling Max and like dipping him down as if he's the woman in the movie, and like going in, fangs into the neck, but then he hurts his back because old people are funny.
And
so there
Max
were 2
is like, are you serious? And Gustav says, no, I like having sudden stabbing back pain more often. And Max is like, oh, I guess you're kidding. Just like, oh, can we just kill this kid?
But the best part was on the way out. So it's funny because he oscillates between like snotty preteen and like little kid. He's like, you think some ice cream would help your aching back?
Yeah.
On the way out, and it's like the juxtaposition is so weird, but Kids are weird.
And as they walk out, they pass a man looking at the movie poster, and it's Lucard in a fedora. Um, and cut. Like, what is this episode going to be about? We have no idea.
No idea.
So after the opening titles, it's time for breakfast back at home with Sophie and Chris. I get the feeling they're on the outs this episode. I get the
Yeah.
feeling she's just like, oh, I thought having sex with an American stud boy was going to be fun, but you kind of suck, Chris.
You criticize me constantly and everything I do, what I eat, what I, want to do. You criticize
they're just a married couple, and
you criticize this world that we live in. You hate European sports. What an asshole. I hate that guy.
So she's having muesli for breakfast. And then he complains that he doesn't like muesli. He doesn't like European sports. It's lawn bowling and ladies tennis.
I mean, rugby exists. Rugby exists in Luxembourg. Rugby is way cooler than any American sport.
Exists in Luxembourg.
What does?
Footy.
Oh, yeah. These are like popular sports, more popular than women's tennis, which is still popular. There's nothing fucking wrong with women's tennis. But like, these are like hella popular things.
Okay.
Whatever. So, me said boys your age and go do something. Like, go jerk off thinking about Sophie eating muesli, like shitting muesli on your chest. Fucking dork. Sorry.
You gotta leave that in. Okay.
I will. God.
So Gustav comes in, his back still hurts. Sophie's like, do you want some muesli? And he's like, that's birdseed. And Chris is like, see, the old fucking white man thinks I'm right. It's like, gee, what a shocker.
Chris. Patriarchy
the patriarchy.
We're watching it work, folks.
Oh, I feel like Mia Kirshner's got a few books to write on.
But if she were to be eating like bacon and sausage and they'd be like, oh, you better watch your weight, young lady. What a fucking.
We actually haven't had that comment yet, so we've got 15 more or 14. Nope, I can't count. 14 more episodes for them to get on her about her weight. Okay, well, let's not forget. They're still not as shitty as the guys in Free Spirit.
That's true. That's true.
Can you have a sleepover with your female friends? Chris and Max want to, steal their underwear. It's totally normal.
Yeah, they're going to have a panty raid. They really want a panty raid. Just let them have a panty raid. They can't wait for college.
That's how Gustav hurts his back. Okay. But then who's reading the newspaper? Somebody reads the newspaper.
Sophie's reading the newspaper. Chris asks for the sports page. And Gustav asks if anything is going on. And Sophie reveals that Lucard Industry is buying the movie theater that they were just at the night before. And Gustav is very curious about that. He's going to go see his pals down at City Hall.
I'm just like, you don't have any pals, Gustav. I know how this is going to go. You're really annoying and weird.
And asks Sophie and Chris and Max to dig through his files to see if they can find anything about the movie theater.
Because all of a sudden they're the Scooby Gang or whatever they were called on Buffy. Speaking of sexual predators, okay, so moving on. Speaking of sexual predators and Republicans, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Moving on to theater zoning.
So we cut to Lucard, right? And he's talking on the phone with the mayor.
Yes, so
something like that
on the phone. But Max goes out because he figures out how they're going to take care of this. He has a eureka moment and heads out, leaving Chris and Sophie to look through the files and not giving off their usual "we're going upstairs to explore" vibes.
Yeah.
Chris is how Mia Kirshner decided she wasn't straight. So Lucard's talking to the mayor, and he's like, "Oh, I hear my old friend Gustav Van Helsing is kicking up a fuss, but it's already been taken care of by Mr. Mayor. And then when Lucard hangs up, he goes, democracy, it's the worst system except all the rest. And I'm like, further qualifying that, or further proving that everybody who says that's a douchebag. Like, right there.
Yeah.
All right.
And then,
do you want to talk about women's tennis?
Is this when we cut back to Chris and the?
This is when we cut back. So Sophie's in the background practicing the violin, and Chris is now getting into women's tennis.
How small is this house? It looks huge from the outside. That Sophie has to be practicing her violin in the middle of the living room while Chris is watching TV. I'm not bitching at her. I mean, I understand that for the purpose of the show, for all of them to be in the same room at the same time is advantageous. But it just doesn't seem realistic that somebody would be practicing their violin. And then it is realistic that Chris would like come into the room and be like, I'm watching TV. I don't care what this bitch is doing. Turns on the TV while she's in the middle of violin. But it doesn't make sense that she would stay or that she would interrupt him. She would go somewhere else because she's a good girl. Yeah. But I mean, my whole thing about European sports was just like, there are sports for you to enjoy, young man. Like, all the time there are sports. I mean, it was just what I said before. It's infuriating, but he starts getting into women's tennis, which I guess is good. Because he's making weird noises while he's watching it. Like,
why? Like so he can say something racist about the Williams sisters. And that's why he had to vote for Trump in the sequel series. Yeah, but he is making noises. He is like, whatever, whoever. He name drops.
He says Monica, but I don't know if that's an actual person or.
There was a Monica female tennis player. One thing I don't understand, though, is there's also men's tennis.
Yep.
Okay. But Gustav gets home and he is upset because they didn't take him seriously downtown, even though he was the one who restored King Adalberg's grave. And I was like, this is the first time anybody's ever suggested that Gustav is actually useful.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. But they've decided that there's nothing in the files about the theater, so it must have some sort of private meaning to Lucard they can't figure out. So, it is Monica's winning straight sets. Monica, what was her name? I don't know. So Gustav packs up to go search the theater in the daylight. He tells the kids to stay in the house.
Monica Seles. Monica Seles. I remember that now.
Okay.
Sorry.
Sorry. Chris got into figure skating a few years later and broke somebody's leg. He's a ninja. I remember when the show started, Chris was like kind of okay. He like sucks now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, folks. We're actually going to get to good stuff, but we just need to get through.
We need to get to the slog through this garbage first. It's all to set up the good stuff. So,
well, half of it is to set up the good stuff. The other half is the kids. Okay. So then we cut to Gustav falling down because of his back in the movie theater.
Okay, I missed that. I missed that. I was like, did he get his legs bashed? Like, why is he like pulling himself around by his arms on the ground? It was really weird.
Bad
like
back.
Military army crawl, it was very strange. Okay, bad back. That makes sense. Bringing that back in.
Okay. So now we cut back to the house to the kids watching tennis. So Sophie's given up the violin to watch tennis. Max comes in saying he's figured it out.
He's got a great idea.
What did you figure out?
Yeah.
You little fucking idiot. And he gives them the newspaper and he's put an ad in the newspaper. If you know anything about why Alexander Lucard bought the movie theater, please come see Max at this address. Max is a really cool guy, which is weird. And
Sophie immediately gets pissed.
It's just like, and I'm like, why is she getting so mad? Because I thought this is the first time we're mentioning this in the show.
Yeah.
We're 7 episodes in. she's like, look, you little shit. It doesn't matter if we have a blessed cross on the wall. If you invite a vampire into our house,
Yeah.
mind you, did they invite that guy in earlier? The full
The the
vampire?
one who, yeah, his student, his former student. Yeah,
Yeah.
but they didn't know he was a vampire.
I don't think that matters if you
I don't
invite them in.
know.
But if they were wounded when they came in, they so many rules, so many rules. Okay. So yeah, Sophie then walks Max through the logic, and Chris is like, "Oh, you're an idiot, aren't you?" And it's like, "Yep,
And then he face palms like, yeah. It was kind of
yeah."
funny, but he was not very good. And then is there a knock at the door right away, or do we cut back to Gustav?
We cut to Gustav in the theater. The sun is going down. Chris says, so they're shit out of luck because they think Lucard's going to come and kill him.
Right.
And then we cut to Gustav, who's on crawling around, and all of a sudden there's a 1990 special effects sequence, and all of a sudden a vampire appears on the stage at the
Yeah.
movie theater.
And
But then
oh yeah.
we cut to mom arriving. That's where they say what a pleasant surprise. I have it written down.
Oh, okay. So yeah, the doorbell rings and there's this very, very long, clearly padding scene where the kids are anticipating Lucard being at the door. So they grab all of their vampire hunting weapons that they can and approach the door very slowly, open it up, and it's mom. And suddenly all the crosses and holy water and everything is behind their backs. And they're pretending like everything's normal. And mom kind of gives them a quizzical look, but
She's such a bad actress who knows.
she doesn't ask any questions like, why were you holding a giant gold cross up in front of me? And she doesn't seem to know that her uncle Helsing is a fucking vampire hunter. Like,
nope. I think mom is one of those business executives who
has never read a book.
all of that, but they could be entirely replaced by an email client. So,
oh yeah.
like those, like when you watch something and it's just some dude sitting in an office without a desk and his secretary does all the work. You're like, why the fuck is he there then? Like,
and why does he get paid so much? Yeah.
What? Yeah, it's like, oh, it's just because he's a dude. Okay, so then we cut to the theater, and this is the vampire from the beginning. I had totally forgotten that Kim Coates was in this. I didn't recognize him in the silent movie footage.
Yeah, he looked like
holy shit.
He just looked like Dave Vanian. I was like, I know that's not Dave Vanian, but he looks like Dave Vanian. And he's overacting again, bringing back the overacting and being very dramatic and da 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 da. And Gustav is just kind of stunned, like, what are you doing here? I thought you were dead.
And you've been dead for 60 years.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, this is the 90s. I thought I'd overslept. And then he maniacally laughs a bit and says, of course I've been dead. But then we cut to the house where mom is sitting around, and there's a lot of Canadian accents from mom and Chris. And then we cut back to the theater where the vampire, the movie vampire, is explaining that he will be even more famous than he was before now because he's come back.
Because he played a vampire and now he is a vampire. How cool is that?
This runs into a problem later on in a second, but still. He's still overacting, and then he goes to bite Gustav. Ugh. Cut to mom.
Back at the house. Yeah. It's very short edits in this with the kids, which is fine, but it's like just distracting me from the stuff I want to see.
Yeah. So where's Gustav? Well, he's at the movies. Walk, walk.
Back at the movies. I mean, it was literally just a cut for that gag.
Is mom whining that they don't want to talk to her yet, or is that later? Okay.
That's later, I think.
Okay. So then we cut back to the theater, Is he still going to bite Gustav?
So he comes very, very close. And this was the part. So I loved the overacting part. But then he like pulls away from Gustav right as he's getting close to the neck. And Gustav kind of shows a little bit of relief. But then it's just Kim Coates. It's not this actor. It's this old movie actor turned vampire. He's like totally 90s. And he's like, I don't know what I'm doing. I just like the thirst, blah, blah, blah. It's just so much and I can't handle it. And he completely changes. And it was so funny, unintentionally, I'm sure. But it was like, that scene in Pee-wee's Big Adventure where they get like a regular actor to play Pee-wee. Who is it? It's like in the movie, it's like
yeah.
I can't think of his name.
I can't think of it.
But it's kind of like, no, it's not like that. It's something different from that movie. Maybe where it's actually Pee-wee doing the cameo and he speaks into the microphone and he's got a completely different voice. That's kind of what it was like to me.
Well, there's also the problem he wouldn't know to have a Bela Lugosi voice.
Yeah.
Or we don't actually know when he died. So maybe he was pissed off at Lugosi.
But also
but yeah,
it's like this really weird thing where he turns into a Gen X person, even though he supposedly died 60 years ago.
Well, he's been alive. He's just been trapped.
Oh, but does he have a TV? Is he watching?
Why is he in Luxembourg? Why is he speaking
why
English
that theater? Why that theater? It was very weird.
There's a lot of other questions. Okay. So, but he can't bring himself to bite people. He despises violence and the sight of blood.
Yeah.
And Gustav's like, that's pretty ironic, huh? And he's like, yeah, I get it, dude. I get that it's ironic.
He's like,
okay?
The irony is killing me. Very funny.
Okay, so then we cut back to the house. And Mom's like, oh, you know how Milan is this time of year.
What was that?
Well, I don't know, but they must have really thought they were onto something because then there's a knock at the door. Then there's the kids freaking out. It's Lucard there to kill them. Instead, it's a couple little girls selling raffle tickets so they can win a trip to Milan.
It was really
silly.
It was really silly.
Okay, so here's where the actual, this episode now gets to this weird point where Kim Coates is basically giving an Emmy bait performance in Dracula the series. It makes no sense. Like, they cut back, he's talking about how he got screwed out of the studio, screwed him out of sound. They said he didn't have a voice, and we get this is the Morton and Hayes thing. So he's kind of Lon Chaney Sr. because they talk about his makeup. They talk about him being the master of horror and things like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, he is not dressed like Lon Chaney's vampire. He's dressed like Bela Lugosi. At best, he's a generic vampire costume. But
it looks like a Halloween USA vampire
but at least he took the work to slick back his hair.
Yeah.
So, versus Jarrett Wynn versus what's Jarrett Wynn Davies' name on the show? What's your fucking brother? It's the son.
The son.
Niles.
Niles. Klaus.
Morton. Klaus. Klaus Helsing the vampire. Okay, so he's giving this sad talk. It's the silent movie actor trope of I didn't make the transition, and then I was really sad, and then one night I met a real vampire who promised me I'd be able to do all this great stuff. I'd be able to do transformations and better makeup than anybody else, et cetera, et cetera. And then Gustav's like, but he didn't tell you the most important thing. And he's like, that vampires can't be photographed. And I was like, wow, that sucks. Also,
yeah,
is that canon?
I don't know.
Can't be photographed? Mirrors? I don't know. It would be a technology thing, right? If you use mirrors, you can't cast a reflection, so you couldn't. photograph them.
But digital photography would not have the mirrors.
Yes,
So he just
right.
has to wait it out a couple of years.
Exactly. There's actually a book series. All right, everybody, I'm putting on my tweenage nerd hat here. I'm not sure that I ever take it off. There's a book series by a guy named Fred Saberhagen, The Further Adventures of Dracula. I'm sure it has a better title than that. But it was written in the 70s and early 80s. And I think the last one was in the early 90s. But Dracula solved this problem in modernity by having a closed circuit video camera and a monitor in the bathroom so he could see his reflection. And there's a thing about how some human narrator was watching this other vampire see himself for the first time in 600 years and being really upset. But yes, so then we have to cut back to the house for one of the kids to say, "Let's talk, Mom," and Mom to raise one of her eyebrows because the actress could do that.
And then cut back to the theater.
Then cut back to... Okay, we're actually getting to Lucard showing up here.
Yeah.
Okay, we cut back to the theater where Kim Coates explains that he swore revenge on the vampire who turned him, and the vampire cursed this place and sealed him below for 60 years. But over that time, his power has grown, making him powerful enough to destroy this vampire. That's another thing is... Everybody, it seems like every other vampire who Lucard hasn't turned 20 seconds before can kick his ass.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird. So then Gustav's like, "That's why Lucard bought this theater." Oh, this was funny, actually. This should have been one of my points. And Kim Coates is like, "Yes, it was he." And so upstairs we hear Lucard go, "Oh, Gustav Helsing, you continue to impress me ever so slightly with your powers of observing the obvious." And I'm like,
so when I watched it, that's the only thing that when I watched it the first time, that's the only thing I had written down, except I wrote down, "Andrew, your powers of deduction never cease to impress me slightly."
Ever so slightly. Yeah.
It was really good.
And then he's like, "And you old ham, spare me your melodramatic proclamations.
And then
what does he have it done with?"
But what does he immediately do? He raises his arms up melodramatically and then turns into a bat and then flies on stage
with a new bat effect.
Yeah, with a new bat.
It was a new bat effect. It did sparkles and then a single bat. I was so excited that we were done with the other bat effect. Pin in that, I'm afraid. Okay. So then they go and they have a big fight. And Gustav is still hurt. He crawls over to get the to his bag. He gets a steak and throws it to
Kim Coates.
Kim Coates.
Again, helping the vampire.
Helping the vampire, which is the third episode they've done this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, the last episode was the Klaus episode, right?
Yeah.
And Lucard said, "This is our one night truce." And then the one with Max, he was like, "I'm letting you off this one night, Max." So there's a lot of letting people off one night with vampires. So then Dracula has to escape because Kim Coates has a stake now and Dracula can't fight him because Dracula's not very powerful, it turns out. Email him at lucard@smalldickenergy.com. So he changes into a bat, but he changes into the multiple bats and flies out the door.
Yeah.
And then, okay, one thing we didn't talk about, is that at the beginning, while Kim Coates is still doing his Bela Lugosi impression, Gustav mentions that he's beloved, at least by Gustav. But, he's seen Vampire's Tomb 27 times. And so Kim Coates knows that his movie's lived on.
Yeah.
It's not the Van Gogh scene, but it's all right, for character development.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. Oh, God. Oh, my God. Oh,
The only thing about the Matt
Smith
Smith
episode
series,
too.
I know,
Oh,
it's the only thing I love.
just like, just
that
God,
one
I'm ready to
scene.
cry.
I mean, how
Oh
much
my
better could it
God.
get? Bill Nye's in it.
Oh.
The guy who played whatever, different podcast,
Anyway,
different
different podcast that we're not doing because
no.
no. Okay, so, unless Disney Plus Doctor Who gets canceled after a season, then we can do it, which is not a zero possibility. So then Kim Coates kills himself. He's like,
He
you know
stakes
what?
himself. Yeah.
He stakes himself. He's like, I would much rather be immortal on screen than to be this
monster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, give me my fucking Emmy. And it's like, nope, he kills himself. Gustav screams out, no. Cut to commercial. Also, the no, what was Gustav's plan?
I don't know.
Right?
I don't know what Gustav's plan was. Yeah. But there's a really cool effect where Kim Coates like fades away, but it turned into like 35 millimeter film fades away. It was really cool. I thought that was kind of neat for this show.
Somebody who watched this liked old movies.
Speaking of, I would watch this TV show if it were Kim Coates as a vampire, not maybe despising violence and blood sucking, but doing like Purple Rose of Cairo style, coming out of the movie screen and killing people in the movie theaters. Next. I would watch that.
I watch that with a lot of people, actually, but yes. We'll talk about, I'll do a little post-screen Coates, since you don't know who he is outside of this.
The only thing I've seen him in is Battlefield Earth.
Which is on par for everything else I've ever seen him. We'll talk about it in a second. But yeah, so, and Emmy award-winning performance by Kim Coates. Cut to Gustav laying on the couch moaning or whatever. And then we established that Mom left without even saying hi to Gustav, which I'm like, well, of course not. You weren't going to pay that actress for two shoots. But also that's the same thing she did last time or something. And it's just weird how she disappears. Like they never do that. And they're like, no, she had to go do some work. But why didn't Lucard come kill us last night since Max invited him in because Max is a fucking idiot? And Gustav's like, Lucard must have something much worse in mind for us. Cut to Lucard in his office talking to someone. It's Mom. She's like, I always heard you were such a hard bargainer, Lucard, but you made it very easy for me. And he's like, it's a deal I want to do. End of episode.
There's they do this thing where Lucard, she's sitting down and Lucard walks around behind her. So she's kind of craning her neck in a way that's suggestive of her being willing to fuck or down to get bitten by a vampire. It was
I mean, she was down to fuck the first in the pilot.
That's true.
I mean, this is next episode is just like Mom and Lucard dating and Lucard making hard eye contact every time. Like, ugh. Okay.
Do vampires fuck?
It depends on your continuity. Usually not traditionally because they're dead. So they can't flow blood. But we don't need to talk about this. Go watch Twilight. That'll explain it for you. I think they fuck in Twilight. I think the joystick works in Twilight.
I'm not gonna watch that. It's my weekend. I would like to have a pleasant one. I'm not.
You can watch all 7 of them. Okay, so Kim Coates, this was 1990. This is the same year or the year before Last Boy Scout. So he basically just played villain number 3 or villain number 2 in a bunch of disposable action movies. He's only memorable because he's got a slightly distinctive, not even in this one, but his eyes are very distinctive when he's not in black or in white face paint and slick black hair. So he's like distinct for that. And then not even in that era, but like post IMDb era, he's notable for being a man named Kim.
Yeah.
But that's it. Like I had no idea. Like he's really good in this. Like,
yeah, he was so really good. He made the episode enjoyable.
Right. And I'm like, did he want a trip to Luxembourg? Or, second thought, since all of his scenes are in the same place and were all shot at the same time, did Gustav go back to Toronto for them to shoot this so they didn't have to fly Kim Coates over? I hope he got a nice vacation.
I hope he
did. But this
too.
actually has me like, I kind of want to see. But I mean, he does stuff now like where he's the killer on zombie cop type shit. Like he's completely genre actor, but this is a lot of range that I just. And in Dracula the series, how they got this, it really suggests if you had better actors in this, it might not be such a piece of shit. It might not be so good.
He was really good. I was impressed by him. I loved the characterization. I loved the old movie aspect. Like, this was a pretty good episode if they would have gotten rid of the kids. And
we've been
all
saying
of the
that
shit with the
since
kids. Yeah.
The beginning.
Yeah.
The sooner Dracula eats those kids, the better the show. But yeah, and the other thing is it's more accurate as a stylized old movie piece than Morton and Hayes.
Yeah.
Like, not a lot more, but a little bit. Like, Morton and Hayes, some of those episodes, you're like, did you guys like old movies? But this one is like, yeah, there was somebody who really liked old movies for this.
Yeah.
So that was cool. And yeah, apparently we're going to have an ongoing story arc about Lucard and the mom having a business deal, which is cool. I also thought it was interesting. She comes back. She's in episode 1 and episode 7.
And that's it?
If you started watching this so far, she comes back. But
yeah,
I mean, at this point, she's only been in these 2. So if you hadn't been watching this, you would have no... I mean, you don't really need much context for her, but you would have no context for her when she shows up at the door. So
yeah. So the next episode, again, I think is featuring Mother. It's called Damsel in Distress, and you will be glad to hear that this is the first episode not directed by Alan Eastman.
No, there was another one.
No, but this is the first one.
No, there was another one that he didn't do.
Oh yeah, Double Darkness. Sorry.
Yeah. It's okay.
So that'll be nice. A nice little break from Alan Eastman, even though this one wasn't a bad episode. Again, they couldn't
because
kill the kids.
They just filmed it in Canada. It was fine. Alan Eastman shoots better in Canada. Yeah, I don't. This was it's a weird like gem of a performance, and an otherwise
pile of shit.
Glorious pile of shit though. Just. It's like a sensitive performance. Just like, what is this?
I know, it's really good. I was shocked. Anyway, we could go on and on.
But this would actually be the first one I'd be like, yeah, like, if you know Kim Coates is, you should watch this episode. Like, you'd be really thrilled.
Yeah.
Presumably on YouTube or somewhere, or I don't know where you watch Dracula series anymore. But anyway, and there wasn't a lot of the card in it, which is what it is.
Yeah. Well, great. On that note, Andrew's yawning, so
wow,
he's exhausted himself talking about how great Kim Coates is, which I completely agree. Next week's episode 8, Damsel in Distress. Thank you all for listening. See you then. Bye.
Bye.